Howdy, folks. Tom Bowlus with Bass Gear Magazine. But much more importantly, I'm here talking today with Emma Anzai, founding member and bass player for the Sick Puppies. So, hello, Emma.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going fantastic. Everything going well on your side?
Yes, yes, going well.
It's great to talk with you. I know Bass Gear Magazine last kind of interacted with you back in 2017. David Elfson in his Metal on Metal column did an interview with you.
Yep,
And that wasn't too long after the Warwick base camp. I think I met you briefly there, and I know I hung out with David a little bit at that one.
that's right. Yes, I know the base camp was really special. It was the first time I've been to anything like that, and it was really a really cool experience.
They put on a heck of an event. That was amazing.
They sure do.
Most importantly, we're talking because Sick Puppies has a new album coming out. This is your sixth, I think, studio album, right?
Fifth or sixth, counting the one before. Yeah, it was fifth.
By my count, Fury was fifth, so this would have been sixth, maybe.
Okay.
But
Yeah. Okay. Probably. Yeah. I'm losing count,
this album's
literally.
called. Well, hey, yeah. I mean, you are a busy person. We'll get into that in a second. But the new album's called Wave the Bull, and I
Yep.
believe this comes out in February of 2025 or early
Yes.
2025.
Yes. So yeah, early 2025.
You do have one single out already. There Goes the Neighborhood, which is fantastic. I got a chance to listen to that. What can you tell us about this album? What can fans expect to hear?
It's definitely been in the works for a while. I think that's kind of like the thing to say is that yes, it has been a long time, but there's a few things that sort of came up along the way. So I think, long story short, it just felt like the right time. It kind of all happened for a reason, and it fell in a right time frame, and everyone felt good about it. And basically, the I guess the title of the album sort of says a lot about it. It's just to us, wave the ball just means bringing on adversity without fear. You know how sometimes you'll shy away from it or you'll be afraid, and of course, naturally, we're afraid of the unknown and uncertainty, and bad things happening and that kind of thing. But it just means bringing on the adversity without fear, and just having the courage to just to face it. And so a lot of the songs on the album are very different to each other, but then the theme kind of ties it all together in different what do you call it, levels. There's a section that's about the the foreshadowing of events, and then there's a section about the fight and about being in the thick of it, and then there's a section of the aftermath, which is a lot of the reflective songs that we have on the album. So that's kind of grouped into that category. So it's the first time we've done anything thematically like that. So that was exciting to sort of dive into.
About to ask. It sounds like it's a theme album, so that's very, very cool.
Yeah, it
Um,
is. I guess it's, yeah, sort of. I wouldn't call it a maybe a concept album, not as far as like bands like maybe Green Day have taken it, but it's sort of to group the songs and to make sense of it. We kind of did it that way.
but intentionally meant to be listened to together, right? They all kind
Oh
of
yeah,
probably
yeah,
add to and build
yeah,
on each other.
totally. You can listen to it top to bottom, and it's fine. But it's sort of just if you want to look deeper into it, yeah, the themes sort of fall into one of three categories. It sort of makes sense of how different the songs are, I guess. We have the same type of stuff we've always done, like heavy, really aggressive songs, and then also we've had the luxury to be able to do really kind of sweet songs as well, like ballady type songs. So it kind of fits together.
Very, very cool. Um, I know in the press release for Where the Bull, you mentioned that the album is in part a response to the trials and tribulations of the band's history and hardships, both professionally and personally. And I'm just wondering, are you comfortable sharing some of the professional or personal hardships that help shape this album?
Sure, yeah, definitely. I think, in the past there was, the elephant in the room of the singer change. That was a real
Yeah.
challenging thing, both professionally and personally, for various reasons for all three of us. Brian coming into it, that was challenging. And then for Mark and I, just dealing with the aftermath of all that's involved with changing a singer, and all the emotions and the stuff, and then also the response and the feedback and all that kind of stuff. There was a lot of drama with that. So you know, look, everyone goes through stuff. Everyone has hardships and whatnot. And it was just a challenging thing for the band. But then I guess on a professional level, yes, COVID just like everyone else. Everyone had their ups and downs with that. Some more than others, definitely. And also surviving as a band. I think a lot of bands didn't survive that period. A lot of people didn't survive that period. So it gets really dark. But in terms of just I think every like musician and band sort of reassessed and reevaluated what they did, and like, are they going to be able to do that again? And it was a lot of uncertainty, I think, in terms of just people for the entertainment industry. But there was, just that, and navigating like emotions and feelings and you know things that had to do with that. And I think coming out the other side, you don't realize it at the time. You just kind of like, things happen and you roll with it. And then afterwards, you're like, okay, that was a certain period of time, and I felt definitely a certain way, and I feel very different now. And I think that's just the distinction of that was good to have, and now being able to release it feels good.
Excellent. I know I was reading through your interview with David. You guys had mentioned about band member changes. Of course, that was in 2017. And you
Yeah,
talked
a while
about
ago now.
changes being somewhat like a divorce where the music are the kids. And I thought that was
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Yeah, that is that is it's a strange parallel for people with kids, I guess, but it's the best way that I could possibly describe maybe some of the feelings and the emotions that are maybe very similar. I don't know. I can't speak personally on to that, but because you always share something, with the past and with people in your past, because it's a thing that's like living and breathing and existing. You know, that's maybe a bit of a stretch, but just the feelings involved, just the connection that's there because of what you have now, and then also like other people accepting a new reality, a new situation, is just also difficult sometimes. But we're fortunate where a lot of people are really taking to the new lineup, and we're really proud of what we've done. And it's difficult sometimes when you're really proud of what you've done, but then you've got a lot of negativity too that comes in. You're like, well, I don't know. You got to try not to let that get to you, and focus on what you're proud of, and the people that do enjoy that as well.
Negativity is always going to be there, in every context.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
hopefully there's also some positivity there all the time. So you just kind of filter out the bad
Yes.
and focus on the good.
Absolutely.
Speaking of the personnel changes, you've been playing with Mark now for over 20 years. Does it seem that long?
No, I don't think it does. Time really does fly, when you really get into things, and it's only when you look back you're like, wow, that really was 20 years ago. But it's been great friendship, and just being able to know, like, musically, when we get in a room, it's very familiar, and you can kind of like, I don't know, there's something to a chemistry when you've been playing with members for so long that you can't replicate. With others, I guess, and we're lucky to have that sort of rhythm section, connection, which is really cool because playing live is always fun when you have that.
Absolutely. I was curious, how would you describe your rhythm section dynamic between you and Mark?
I think that there's a lot of like I mentioned before, when you play live, when you play in a room together, there's a lot of telepathic stuff that happens. You know what the other person's, when you know what he's going to do. He's going to do this fill here, and I know what I'm going to do. Sometimes that happens, and you're like, okay, so that's definitely from the chemistry of playing together for that period of time, and it helps too, recording too, like, you know what I mean, like, uh, writing and stuff like that. It's like, okay, well, we can do this here, and there's like a second unspoken language that just happens through music, which is really cool and really fun.
Yeah, you're both live and studio playing, the two of you just seem pretty effortless. Like you're, because you're doing some tight, complex stuff, but you make it look so dang easy.
Well, sometimes it does get challenging though, especially when you've got to replicate it live. Like, because when you're in the studio, you're writing, you're just like, let's just do this here, and you do it quickly, and you move on, and then we're like, okay, so live, how are we going to do it? And then that becomes, I don't know. Sometimes that's challenging. We're like, well, I did this, and like you kind of have to revisit what you did and how you did it sometimes, but that's kind of part of the fun as well.
I know in some of my bands writing originals, we'd write stuff that sounded great. And you're like, oh my gosh, we have to play this live. How can I do that?
Yes, the daunting task of doing that.
Now, Brian joined the band in 2016. And what would you say? I have my own thoughts for in a second here, but what would you say you feel Brian has brought to the band?
I think that even when we were doing, we came out in 2016, 2017. It's just a different perspective on everything. There's dynamics that happen that can be really conducive to stuff and sometimes not. But in this case, it's been really positive. There's been a lot of energy, and I know I've said this before too, but there's like a lot to prove on both Mark and I, and also him, and together feel like we have something to prove. So it's a good energy to have to propel things forward and to have that excitement. Sometimes when you've been doing something for so long, you do have to find that inspiration sometimes and a different perspective. And when he came in, it just sort of changed that dynamic and renewed things.
Obviously, vocally there's a change there, but I also definitely noticed on the guitar side as well. He brings a different feel and definitely a heavier feel, I think, on the guitar side.
Yeah, for sure. I think in the writing process that, we sort of, in terms of like what we're into and what we naturally gravitate towards, that chemistry was, it was good. It was there, and we had similarities in what we wanted to do. So that was good. It was helpful.
Cool. I want to talk about the first two songs, at least that I've heard off of the new album. So There Goes the Neighborhood was released end of July. And I mean, first time I heard that song, I think everyone probably had this reaction. You got to turn it up. I mean, this is a song that you just like, yes, and I'm definitely hearing a little bit of, I know you were a Rage Against the Machine fan, for a while. I'm hearing a little bit of Rage going on there. But then you guys take it in some very different and unique directions. And the bass really, really drives and kind of defines the song, I felt. Tell me a bit about that song and the writing process.
Sure, yeah. You're right. I really influenced by Rage Against the Machine, and at the time I was listening to a lot of Royal Blood as well, bass-driven stuff and rhythmic stuff that I really enjoyed. And I think it was like it's really good when you can get in a room and not feel the pressure and just be like, let's just have fun and what would we do, rather than sort of thinking, oh, what would someone else like to hear from us or whatever, and try and be as true to that as possible. So in that moment, I think we were like, yeah, let's just have some fun with it. And particularly in the bridge, we were like, yeah, well, and just sort of did instinctually, like, when you have influences, you listen to stuff that's going to stick in your brain, and you do what you like, and that's a little bit of what they do, of course. And so we did that for the bridge, but also just bass wise with the verses, I think I just like wanted to just get kind of like weird with it and do some weird rhythms and stuff like that, and had fun with it and not think too hard about it. And it turned out well.
Oh, it's definitely a fun song. Are you playing like a mix of slap and fingerstyle on that one?
Yes, it's slap and pick.
Oh, it is pick. Okay. It sounded like pick, but then on the video. There goes the neighborhood. Boy,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I do like all three, just depending on what the song I guess calls for, but mainly it's pick. Yeah,
Yeah, that was one of my comments I was going to get to is on your playing style because you do use all three of those styles. But yet I notice you still sound like you know, on each style. And to me, that's hard because they like each of those three styles has such a different volume and dynamic and kind of inherent tone. You know, it's
yeah.
to me, it's super impressive to have a player like yourself transition between the three and still, you know, it sounds coherent. It sounds like you the whole time. How do you manage that?
Oh, that's cool. Thank you. I don't know. I guess it's just sort of a trial and error type thing. Like, like sometimes we'll do like a pass for recording, and it'll be like, okay, does this sound? You have to sort of like service the song first before anything, because sometimes I'll want to do like, oh, I want to slap this part, like, but it just isn't doesn't sound right. You know what I mean? But it feels good for me to do. So just making that decision between, okay, so what's going to sound better for the song? Like that's, I guess everyone does that. And more often than not, like I'll try and make it interesting. You know what I mean? Like if there's an opportunity to say, okay, maybe for the chorus, we will slap it because it sounds more percussive with the drums, and it fits in with the vocals or whatever. I'll try and do that, and yeah, I enjoy kind of like dissecting recordings like that and seeing what fits. It's fun.
Absolutely. I know you mentioned talking to David, you know, you like the ability on bass where you can kind of have some of the elements of a drummer, you know, with the
Yeah,
percussiveness and
yeah.
keeping the rhythm. But then you're also laying down melodies and rhythms that go with the guitar. And that's what makes it so fun to be a bass player, right?
Absolutely. I've always said that. It's like, I mean, and you can be all different types of bass players. Like you can be super melodic, play with fingers but then you can also be like thumping with the drums and being almost like a percussive instrument. I love how bass can do that. And I never really realized that at the very beginning. And when I did realize that, I was like, oh, this is great because I love drums as well. And I also love guitar. So it's just like a happy medium. It's good.
Absolutely. And it also plays off of the vocal lines too. You know, sometimes some of the best bass lines are ones that they'll have a theme or a counterpoint to the vocal line too, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, true, true. I haven't experimented with that as much, but I like that idea. Yeah.
Yeah. The second song that I don't know if this has been released yet, but I got a chance to listen to "Going Places."
Woke up with blood on my shirt, my head spinning like I probably said a few stupid things. I'm late for work, but somehow I don't give a shit. And besides, my job really fucking stinks. I'm on the brink of letting go and taking my ass down to Mexico. When will I be back, man? I don't even know. But if you wanna know more, I just might leave a note.
Right. Yeah, it
And
hasn't been released yet. Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
cool.
what an awesome tune! I mean, like such a different feel. You were saying there's a lot of variety and very different feel from
Yeah.
"There Goes the Neighborhood," but there's like a similar attitude. You know, there's a bit of an attitude going through that. Um, that one's got more of a punk vibe, I feel like, and I was like hearing like glimpses of Pixies and Nine Inch Nails on that one, like some really oddball thoughts were popping into my head as I was listening to it. But the overall mix of elements, I mean, this is like you don't sound like anybody, and the song doesn't sound like anybody. I didn't mean to imply that it did, but it's very very unique. It's got a lot of different elements, and I love it.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear you say that. That's funny that the influences that's really cool that you got that from that. Um, we were that's one song that we really. I mean, yes, thought was put into it. I know that before we were like, we just, yeah, there was a level of no thought, and then obviously you have to think afterwards. But when it first got written, it was very just like throw together, like, why don't we just do this? particularly speaking about bass and the bass line, it's definitely something that I haven't sort of done before, and it was very uncomfortable for me to sort of leave it that way because, to me, in my opinion, it was quite sloppy. And
Hmm.
I like stuff that's tight and like choppy, and I like chops, and I like listening to that kind of rhythmic stuff. But this was a little bit more like, I don't know what category I would put it in, but it was done so fast that I'm like, okay, well, that'll be a placeholder for now. But then we just ended up going with it, and and normally I'd be like, no, no, I should probably redo that because it's not quite right. But it really, and then listening back, and once the vocals got done and everything, I was like, that fits really well with the theme and with the attitude, like you said, of the song, of just real like not giving a shit and being
Yep.
like apathetic, and but then also there's this punky attitude as well. So I'm like, I think that fits. So it's kind of uncomfortable for me to sort of like let that go and go, okay, that is what it is, kind of thing.
That's really interesting that you were, contemplated, cleaning up a bit, but yeah, it has that punk vibe to it, just kind of a, screw them all and just crank it out there.
Yeah.
Um, but it's so one of my notes here is that it's a unique mix of elements. It's toe tapping, but also fist raising, so it's kind of like a yeah song, but also you're
Right.
kind of going along, you're going along with it. Really sucks you in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that was like an accident. It was we were sort of also thinking about the '90s and Beastie Boys, and like the attitude that they
Yeah.
had. Um, it was sort of something had on our minds at the time. I think we were listening to it a little bit, and we are like, "That's just so cool!" Just the vibe that they had, and you know what I mean. Like, and we're just let's just bring that back, and there's a lot of influences that we had not sort of tapped into on previous albums that we did on this one, which was really fun.
Well, if the rest of the album is, I'm sure you said they're very diverse, but if they're kind of at the same, level of compelling listening that the first two, I can't wait to hear the rest.
Oh yeah, cool. Thank you.
Um, was there anything, I mean, other than some of the themes you talked about before, was there any other different approaches that you took to the recording or performance of this album, or actually the writing or performing this album?
Yeah, we had a period in time, and this is also what sort of may have taken a long time, is that it's funny. Like I was talking to someone about this earlier about how there's this fine line between like what do people want to hear from us as a band versus what do we want to do, and you know how there's always that fine line because you can't just ignore what you think others want you to sound like, kind of thing, like the fans that do like your band.
Right.
You can't ignore that because then you'll just be like, I don't know. I mean, I know some people do that, and that's the beauty of, I guess, being an artist, is that you can do whatever you want to do. Um, because I know, me being a fan of bands, like I like to hear the songs that I grew up with and that I want to hear. And maybe at that point in their career, they're just like, we've played that so many times, we want to play the new stuff, and I totally get that. Um, but I think the approach to this started with potentially like, okay, so what should we do? And we maybe overthought it a little bit at the beginning, and then there was a long period of doing that, and then we hit a point in time where we're like, okay, we just got to do what we do, and we'll see what happens. And I think from that point forward, we started to really love what we were coming out with, and that ended up being this album.
Oh, fantastic. Now I have to mention I'm a definite fan of Evanescence, and uh, well, I see we're playing bass and Sick Puppies would translate pretty well. There's a lot of I think some similar elements, but there's also a lot of different elements too. So
Yeah.
I'm curious how you can compare and contrast what it's like to play bass in those two different bands.
Yeah, that's a good question, and something that I had thought about too, like transitioning and playing for them. And I guess Sick Puppies is like, it was always very frenetic and very high energy, up tempo stuff that was almost going to fall, the wheels were going to fall off at any point in time. That's what it felt like, even playing it. So it was very different transitioning to Evanescence songs because they're very groovy and they have a very different tempo, and the bass lines are, some of them are super melodic and really cool, and I think it was just a matter of like calming down want to rush, and that
Oh
was
yeah.
really good for me as to develop as a musician too, because I would always just want to rush and like get it out there kind of thing. So this was a good experience and a good lesson for me to just calm down a little bit and just play for the song. And I really appreciate it because I absolutely love the groovy stuff as well. It's really cool.
Well, I've watched a couple videos of some of your live shows with them, and it does seem like you're bringing just a little bit more attitude to the bass lines too, which is nice.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool that you think that. I think it's just a natural. Like I get excited, and you kind of exercise demons sometimes when you when you play live. I'm sure a lot of musicians feel that way. It's like this cathartic experience. I've always said that,
Absolutely.
and it still feels like that. It's you can't replicate it in any other way other than playing live. So sometimes that, and especially playing with Will too, their drummer, really fun drummer to play with, and especially live, he does stuff live that he doesn't do on the albums. So it's cool to be able to like, hear what he does there, and then try and follow those fills and a lot of syncopated, a lot of triplet stuff, and yeah, it's cool.
Definitely. Um, are you going out on tour with either band anytime soon, Sick Puppies or Evanescence?
There's some Evanescence shows coming up. We're doing Rocklahoma this coming weekend. I think it's the weekend, and then doing tour in October. But anything to do with like either band, Sick Puppies or Evanescence, we always just post it on social media and stuff like that.
Cool. Um, being with Bass Gear Magazine, I have to ask some gear questions. I know
Yes,
you've played Warwick basses for a long time. Um, and are you still playing Warwick? Because I also see you playing a lot of Stingrays and Music
right.
Man.
Um, I was for the longest time for the longest time playing Warwick, and I loved yeah, that's right, the base camp, and
Yep.
as you know, and then recently I actually switched. I think it was a little bit after the pandemic or during the pandemic. I switched over to Music Man, and it kind of worked out really. It worked out well in this situation because Tim from Evanescence, he was playing bass beforehand. He was playing Music Man as well, so the transition made it a lot easier. I was like, okay, of course I could have brought in played other basses, but they have a lot of different tunings, so it requires like multiple basses, and so he already had Music Man basses, and then I had some as well, so it just worked out really well in that situation. Um, and then as for amps and stuff, I recently switched to Quad Cortex with
Oh,
by
yeah.
Neuro DSP. I know like everyone loves them, but I've been a fan of like Dark Glass and also just Neuro DSP plugins for a while, especially Dark Glass, and I feel like they really get the bass sound, and then so now you can integrate the plugins. Well, they're doing that in real time currently, integrating it into the quad cortex. So I'm excited to play around with that and sort of replicate some of the dark glass sounds. Um, and then as for cabinets, I don't play with a cabinet with Evanescence. It's in ears, but if I do with Sick Puppies, it would be Ampeg cabinets.
Yeah, I know you played Ampeg before, and I knew you had played Dark Glass pedals before, so I was listening to the really killer heavy tones you're getting on the new album. I heard some Dark Glass in there, but saying that's Quad Cortex with some of the Dark Glass presets, right?
I think at
Or
that time that would have been dark glass pedals because I only
okay,
recently switched to. But I mean that's the thing though. Like you can get that same sound, and
yeah,
I think that's what the challenge was, is to replicate some of those album sounds live. And I think yeah, with Quad Cortex it's a lot easier to do. But yeah, it would have been dark glass.
fantastic. Um, it does. I mentioned the Rage Against the Machine, reference before. I do hear a little bit of Timmy C in some of the tones. Like I always love his heavy
Yeah,
tones,
yeah.
and they're hard to dial in, and you're doing your own tone for sure. But I caught some similarities there. You've got some cool things going on there.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you. That's a compliment. I love Timmy C.
All right. Now this is probably an inapplicable question because I'm sure you are so busy with both bands or whatnot. But if you do have any free time, do you have any hobbies or things that you do for leisure activities?
Yes. If it's not music, I love getting lost in TV shows and movies. And I love getting lost in going to the gym and doing like fitness stuff as well.
The mind
Just to
and
free
the
the
and the
mind.
body. Yeah, keep yourself going.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Everyone tries to ask questions about advice to younger musicians and whatnot. I'm going to
Mm.
make this a bit more unique here. If current day Emma was able to pass along any advice or direction to high school age Emma back in 1997, what would that be?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it would be, and this is not necessarily related to like bass or music, but it is, and that is, when you're a lot younger, you worry a lot about the future. I mean, I guess you worry about the future at any age, but back then you're like, because there's so many possibilities.
Yep.
I would probably just say, like, I find that if there were a regret that I would have, it would be that I was too worried about something, really anxious about something in the moment, when really, when you look back at, you're just missing the moment, you're missing what's in front of you. Like, when you have, you got great shows and your band's doing great things, and it's like, but you're focused on this other thing that you're really worried about. I would just say try to let go of that, because you will miss the positives, because it's all very transient, doesn't last forever. So just to try and absorb it and enjoy it while you can, because everything is transient, you know. So that's probably what I would say.
That is very good advice. I could have used that myself many times in life. But,
Yeah, I'm still trying to do that.
yeah, it's a good aspirational goal, right? It's hard to achieve
Yeah,
to not worry
yeah,
about things, but it rarely
right.
really helps.
Yeah, and it's just to remind yourself daily, because yeah, everyone gets wrapped up in what they got, worries and the struggles that they have. So it's like good to remind yourself. Try at least.
Well, cool. Well, I really appreciate your time. It's been great talking with you. I love the fact that you're in Evanescence, and I love the fact that you're still going strong with Sick Puppies. And look forward to hearing you in both bands.
Thank you
Um,
so much. I really appreciate it.
yeah. So hopefully I'll catch you on tour, and
Yeah,
can't wait to
that'd be
pick up
great.
Wade the Bull when it comes out in early
Cool.
2025. And
Yeah.
everybody should give that a listen. Definitely check out There Goes the Neighborhood already, and keep your ears peeled for more songs as they get released.
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Emma.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care.
See ya.